Hello and welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Victor Sullivan stood at the edge of his 10-acre property, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and purples. At 42, he had built everything through relentless work and calculated risk. The construction empire he'd created from nothing now employed over 200 people. He'd married Diana Harlow 15 years ago when she was a struggling art student, and he was just starting to gain traction with his first major development project. "You're brooding again," a voice called from behind him. Victor turned to see Diana approaching, her auburn hair catching the fading light. At 38, she still looked stunning, though lately something had changed in her eyes, a distant quality he couldn't quite identify. "Just thinking," he replied, taking a sip from his whiskey glass. "Thompson wants to back out of the River Heights deal." Diana's smile faltered slightly. "The one you've been working on for months? Can he do that?" "He can try," Victor said, his voice hardening. "But I didn't get where I am by letting people walk all over me." Diana nodded, then checked her phone as it buzzed. A slight frown crossed her face before she quickly composed herself. "I need to head into town tonight. The gallery is having issues with a new exhibition setup." Victor raised an eyebrow. "The third late night emergency this month. On a Saturday night? Can't your assistant handle it? Tanya's out of town this weekend. It won't take long." She kissed his cheek, the gesture feeling somehow performative. "Don't wait up." As she walked away, Victor noticed the slight spring in her step. Something about her eagerness nagged at him. Their marriage had grown colder over the past year, with Diana increasingly absorbed in her art gallery business. He'd initially supported her venture with both capital and connections, proud of her ambition. Lately, though, they'd become like ships passing in the night. Victor's phone rang. His site manager, Liam Bennett. "Boss, we have a situation at the Westlake site. Some of the materials delivered aren't up to code. I'll be there in 30, Victor said, downing the rest of his whiskey. As he drove toward the construction site, his mind kept returning to Diana's behavior. 3 months ago, he'd overheard her laughing on the phone, a sound he hadn't heard directed at him in longer than he cared to admit. When he'd entered the room, she'd quickly ended the call. At the construction site, Victor methodically addressed the materials issue, negotiating with the supplier over the phone with the same ruthless efficiency that had built his reputation. By the time he finished, it was nearly midnight. On a whim, instead of heading home, he drove toward Diana's gallery in town. The building was dark. No emergency, no staff working late. Victor sat in his truck, staring at the empty gallery, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. He pulled out his phone and opened the location-sharing app they'd installed years ago for convenience. Diana's location showed her at the Westfield, an upscale hotel on the other side of town. Victor drove there slowly, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He parked across the street and waited, watching the entrance. At 1:17 a.m., Diana emerged, laughing, her hand intertwined with a tall man Victor recognized immediately. Nolan Prescott, the smooth-talking art dealer who had begun supplying pieces to Diana's gallery 6 months ago. They kissed passionately under the hotel awning before Nolan hailed a cab. Diana stood, watching until the taxi disappeared around the corner, a dreamy smile on her face. Then she walked to her car. Victor sat motionless, a glacier forming in his chest where his heart should be. He didn't follow her. Instead, he started his truck and drove to his office downtown. There, in the silence of his corner office overlooking the sleeping town, he poured himself another whiskey and began to think. Victor Sullivan had never been a man who acted on impulse. His success had been built on patience, strategy, and the ability to see 10 moves ahead while others struggled to see 2. He wouldn't confront Diana immediately. First, he needed information. And then, he would make a plan. Chapter 2. Paper Trails. For 2 weeks, Victor maintained the facade of normality at home while methodically investigating his wife's affair. He hired Maxwell Reed, a private investigator recommended by his attorney, to document Diana's movements and communications with Nolan Prescott. You don't seem as angry as most clients, Max observed when they met in an out-of-the-way diner to discuss findings. Victor's expression remained impassive as he reviewed the photographs of Diana and Nolan entering various hotels, their intimate dinners in neighboring towns. Anger clouds judgment, he replied, and I need to see everything clearly. The PI handed over a USB drive. 6 weeks of text messages and emails. Your tech guy came through with those. Fair warning, they get personal. That night, after Diana claimed another gallery emergency, Victor connected the drive to his laptop in his home office. The messages between his wife and her lover painted a vivid picture of not just physical betrayal, but emotional desertion. They mocked his work hours, his dedication to building the business that funded Diana's comfortable lifestyle and her gallery. Victor's so predictable, Diana had written. All he cares about is adding more zeros to his bank account. He hasn't truly seen me in years. 2 more months, Nolan had responded. Once the divorce is final and we've secured what you deserve from this marriage, we'll never have to hide again. Victor's face remained expressionless as he scrolled through their plans to take half his assets, move to New York, and build a new gallery with his money. Diana had been systematically documenting supposed grievances, fabricated claims of emotional neglect, manufactured arguments, even allegations that Victor had been verbally abusive, all carefully dated and detailed. Setting up a narrative, building a case. The next day, Victor visited his attorney, Howard Lowell, carrying a thick folder of documents. They're planning to blindside me with divorce papers soon, Victor explained, sliding the evidence across the desk. She's been creating a fictional record of mistreatment while sleeping with this art dealer. From what I've gathered, they plan to use Montana's equitable distribution laws to take half of everything, including my business. Howard reviewed the materials, his expression growing increasingly grave. This is methodical. They've been planning this for at least 8 months. He looked up. What do you want to do, Victor? Victor leaned forward. I want to understand exactly what I'm facing legally if she files with these fabricated claims. And then I want to know every possible way to protect what I've built. You could file first, Howard suggested. Get ahead of this. No, Victor said calmly. I need them to believe their plan is working. For now. That weekend, Diana suggested they host a dinner party for important gallery clients. Victor agreed amiably, playing the role of supportive husband. Among the guests was Nolan Prescott, who Victor welcomed into his home with a firm handshake and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Throughout the evening, Victor observed the subtle glances between his wife and her lover, noting how Nolan charmed their mutual friends and how Diana beamed at him from across the room. Victor performed flawlessly as the successful, oblivious husband, even engaging Nolan in a lengthy discussion about art market investments. You have quite an eye for emerging talent, Victor told him, raising his glass in a toast. No wonder my wife values your professional opinion so highly. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Diana had gone to bed, Victor went to his office and made a phone call. I need everything, he told Max, every contact, every business dealing, every skeleton in Nolan Prescott's closet. And I need someone watching the gallery's finances. Something doesn't add up there. This is becoming more than a standard infidelity case, Max cautioned. I'm aware, Victor replied. Your discretion will be compensated accordingly. As April turned to May, Victor allowed Diana to believe that her increasingly transparent excuses were working. He listened patiently to her complaints about their marriage, recognizing each as a carefully planted seed meant to justify her impending departure. He noted how she began shifting small personal items from the house, family photographs, heirloom jewelry, sentimental objects she could claim were solely hers. What Diana didn't notice was that Victor had begun making meticulous preparations of his own. Chapter 3. The First Move. On a warm June morning, Diana finally made her move. Victor returned from an early meeting to find divorce papers on his desk, delivered by courier rather than in person. The petition painted him as a cold, controlling workaholic who had emotionally abandoned his wife. It requested half of all marital assets, including a significant stake in Sullivan Construction. Victor called Diana, who didn't answer. Her text response was brief. My lawyer advised against direct communication. This is for the best. He waited until evening to return home, finding Diana packing a suitcase in their bedroom. Were you planning to say goodbye? He asked from the doorway. Diana flinched, then squared her shoulders. I left you a letter along with the papers. I've been unhappy for years, Victor. You must have noticed. What I noticed, he said calmly, was that you've been carefully documenting false grievances while sleeping with Nolan Prescott. The color drained from Diana's face, but she recovered quickly. That's not true, and making false accusations won't help you in court. Victor didn't raise his voice. We've been married 15 years, Diana. I invested in your gallery when no one else would take the risk. I introduced you to every important connection you have. And this is how you repay loyalty. Loyalty, Diana laughed bitterly. You've been loyal to your business. Victor, never to me. When was the last time you asked about my dreams? My needs? Nolan actually sees me, not just as an accessory to his success. Nolan sees you as access to my money, Victor replied evenly. But by all means, finish packing. I won't stop you. Her expression shifted to suspicion. Just like that? No fighting for our marriage. Would it matter if I did? Diana zipped her suitcase. My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything. The prenup is outdated and can be challenged based on your controlling behavior. I've documented everything. Yes, Victor said. I know exactly what you've documented. Something in his tone made Diana pause, but she grabbed her suitcase and headed for the door. The court date is already set. Try not to make this uglier than it needs to be. After Diana left, Victor poured himself a whiskey and made a call to Howard. She served the papers and moved out, he said. Staying with Prescott, I assume. She's confident about breaking the prenup. Their filing was creative, Howard admitted. The judge assigned to the case is Harriet Coleman. She has a history of favoring wives in high-net-worth divorces, especially when emotional abuse is alleged. Then we have work to do, Victor replied. Implement Phase 1. The following week, Diana was unpleasantly surprised when her gallery's main supplier suddenly canceled their contract, citing business restructuring. 3 major clients postponed significant purchases. The gallery's insurance company initiated a routine audit that required extensive documentation. None of these setbacks could be directly traced to Victor, yet they created immediate financial pressure. Meanwhile, Victor appeared to be floundering. He responded to the divorce petition with a standard request for adherence to the prenuptial agreement, but otherwise made no aggressive legal moves. He looked tired in public, inspiring sympathetic glances from mutual friends who had heard Diana's version of events. He's falling apart, Diana told Nolan over dinner, showing him a text from a friend who had seen Victor at a business lunch. Howard says he's not even fighting the financial discovery requests. Nolan raised his wine glass. To new beginnings. I told you he wouldn't know what to do without you managing the social aspects of his life. What neither of them knew was that Victor had opened a new front in the war. Max had discovered that several pieces in Diana's gallery had questionable provenance. Specifically, artwork that Nolan had sourced through his international contacts. Victor had quietly commissioned authentication experts to examine documentation and ownership histories. At the first preliminary hearing, Diana sat confidently beside her attorney, Valerie Winters, a shark-like divorce lawyer known for extracting maximum settlements. Victor arrived with just Howard, lacking the team of lawyers Diana had expected. Judge Coleman frowned at Victor throughout the proceedings, particularly when Valerie presented Diana's detailed records of alleged emotional manipulation. Additionally, Your Honor, Valerie argued, Mr. Sullivan's business success was only possible due to my client's unwavering support and sacrifice of her own career aspirations. The gallery she eventually established was a mere fraction of the creative potential Mrs. Sullivan set aside to support her husband's ambitions. Victor noticed Diana dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, a performance he once would have found convincing. Mr. Sullivan, Judge Coleman addressed him directly. Do you understand that Montana law considers marriage an equal partnership? Your wife's contributions, while perhaps not directly financial, enabled your success. I understand completely, Your Honor, Victor replied respectfully. I founded Sullivan Construction before our marriage, but I've never denied my wife's support was valuable. The hearing concluded with temporary arrangements heavily favoring Diana, substantial monthly support, continued use of their vacation property, and a freeze on major business assets, pending final settlement. Outside the courthouse, Diana couldn't contain her triumph. The judge believed my lies. You get nothing. The kids hate you, she shouted as they left the courthouse steps, though they had no children, her rehearsed script slipping in her moment of perceived victory. I won. She spat on his shoes for dramatic effect. Victor said nothing, his face impassive. Then Diana's phone rang. It was Valerie. Bad news. Victor heard as he turned to leave. The judge received a package from Mr. Sullivan, and it's not good for us. Don't do anything stupid now. As Victor walked to his car, the faintest smile crossed his lips. Phase 2 was now in motion. Chapter 4. The Package. Judge Harriet Coleman sat alone in her chambers, staring at the contents of the package spread across her desk. What had seemed like a straightforward high-net-worth divorce case had just become significantly more complex. The package Victor Sullivan had submitted contained meticulously organized evidence. Authenticated text messages between Diana Sullivan and Nolan Prescott discussing their plan to fabricate abuse claims. Financial records showing Diana had been siphoning gallery funds into a personal account. Statements from household staff contradicting Diana's timeline of events. And most damning, a journal in Diana's handwriting detailing their scheme to take Victor for everything he's worth. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Her clerk entered with another folder. The supplemental filing from Mr. Sullivan's attorney just arrived, Your Honor. This second package contained evidence that 3 valuable paintings in Diana's gallery, sourced by Nolan Prescott, had questionable provenance. External authentication experts had provided affidavits suggesting they might be sophisticated forgeries. Judge Coleman removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. She had initially sympathized with Diana Sullivan, finding Victor's calm demeanor somewhat cold. Now she wondered how much her own biases had influenced her preliminary ruling. She picked up the phone to call both attorneys for an emergency hearing. Across town, Diana paced in Nolan's stylish loft apartment, her face flushed with anger. What exactly did Victor submit? She demanded as Nolan poured her a glass of wine with slightly trembling hands. Valerie doesn't know yet, Nolan replied. The judge sealed it temporarily, but she said it's bad, really bad. Valerie warned we might need to prepare for a complete reversal of the temporary orders. Diana hurled the wine glass against the wall, red liquid streaming down like blood. That's impossible. We were careful. Were we? Nolan asked quietly. You told me he was oblivious, that he was too absorbed in his business to notice anything. He was. Diana insisted, though doubt crept into her voice. For months he didn't question my excuses or late nights. Maybe, Nolan said, he was playing along. That same evening, Victor sat in Howard's office reviewing their strategy. Judge Coleman was shocked, Howard reported. She scheduled an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning. The art authentication reports were particularly effective. They've opened questions about potential fraud beyond just the divorce proceedings. Victor nodded. And the financial tracking? Howard slid a document across the desk. Diana's been moving money from the gallery accounts, about $180,000 so far. Some went to her personal account, but nearly half has been transferred to offshore accounts we believe are connected to Prescott. Good, Victor said. Make sure the FBI Art Crimes Division receives the authentication reports anonymously. I want that pressure point established, but not publicly connected to me yet. Howard looked uncomfortable. Victor, I understand your desire for justice. But are you sure about this approach? Courts generally prefer clean settlements, even with evidence of misconduct. Victor's expression hardened. This stopped being about money the moment I read their messages mocking me in my own home. Diana and Nolan believe they're smarter than everyone else. I'm going to correct that misunderstanding. The emergency hearing the next morning was closed to the public. Diana arrived looking considerably less confident, with both Valerie and a white-faced Nolan flanking her. Judge Coleman got straight to the point. Mrs. Sullivan, I've reviewed evidence suggesting you fabricated abuse claims and misappropriated funds from your gallery business. Mr. Prescott, there are serious questions about the provenance of certain artworks you supplied. Before we proceed, I strongly advise both of you to consult with your attorneys about potential criminal implications. Diana started to protest, but Valerie gripped her arm tightly. Your Honor, Howard interjected smoothly. My client wishes to make it clear that his primary concern is resolving the divorce equitably. While the evidence suggests potential criminal violations, Mr. Sullivan prefers to address those matters separately from the divorce proceedings, if possible. Victor caught Diana's eye across the courtroom. For the first time, he saw fear there, the realization that she had severely underestimated him. Judge Coleman nodded gravely. I'm reversing the temporary orders effective immediately. Mrs. Sullivan, you will return any marital property in your possession. The financial freeze on Mr. Sullivan's business assets is lifted. Additionally, I'm referring the art provenance questions to appropriate authorities for investigation. Outside the courtroom, Diana approached Victor, her earlier bravado replaced by desperation. Victor, please, we need to talk privately. This has gone too far. Has it? Victor asked mildly. I'm only getting started. Nolan stepped forward. Look, Sullivan, maybe we can work something out. The gallery has potential. Diana has talent. We could structure a settlement that benefits everyone. Victor regarded him with the same expression he might give an insect. Mr. Prescott, I suggest you worry about the FBI Art Crimes Unit that's currently reviewing those 3 Degas pieces you authenticated. I understand forgery carries significant federal penalties. As color drained from Nolan's face, Victor turned and walked away, Howard matching his stride. That went well, Howard commented, though I'm not sure threatening them openly was wise. It wasn't a threat, Victor replied. Just a preview. Chapter 5, Count to Moves. By the following week, Diana's carefully constructed world was crumbling. The gallery's reputation took a significant hit when rumors of authentication problems spread through the art community. Major clients quietly distanced themselves. Her credit cards, previously paid from joint accounts, now frozen to her, were declined at a high-end restaurant where she was dining with potential investors. Nolan, meanwhile, received an official letter from the FBI requesting interviews about the provenance of several artworks he had sourced internationally. His normally smooth confidence gave way to increasing panic. We need to separate our situations, he told Diana during a tense dinner at his apartment. My attorney says I should distance myself from the gallery operations while this investigation is ongoing. Diana stared at him in disbelief. Distance yourself? This was your idea. You assured me these pieces were legitimate. Lower your voice, Nolan hissed. I never guaranteed anything. The art market has always operated in gray areas. You knew that. I knew nothing of the sort. You told me these were incredible finds from private European collections. Nolan's expression hardened. Your naivete isn't my problem. I'm trying to protect both of us. By throwing me under the bus? Diana's voice rose despite his warning. Everything is falling apart, and you're already planning your exit? Don't be dramatic, Nolan said dismissively. We just need to be strategic. Victor's clearly been planning this for months. We need to be equally careful. Diana grabbed her purse and stood. I trusted you. I left my marriage for you. You left your marriage for half of Victor's money, Nolan corrected her coldly. Don't pretend this was some great romance. We both saw an opportunity. Diana slapped him hard across the face, then stormed out. Alone in her car, she finally allowed the tears to come. Everything was collapsing around her. The gallery she'd built, her reputation, her financial security, and now even her relationship with Nolan. For the first time, she considered that she might have catastrophically misjudged Victor Sullivan. The next morning, against Valerie's explicit advice, Diana drove to Victor's office, determined to speak with him directly. His assistant, Pamela, regarded her with undisguised contempt but buzzed Victor nonetheless. To Diana's surprise, he agreed to see her. Victor's office remained, as she remembered, meticulously organized, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he had helped build. He stood as she entered, his expression unreadable. You have 10 minutes, he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Diana had rehearsed a speech, part apology, part negotiation, but facing Victor now, words failed her. The gallery is failing, she finally said. My credit cards are maxed out. Nolan is. She trailed off, showing his true colors. Victor suggested, his tone almost conversational. Funny how quickly rats abandon a sinking ship. I made a mistake, Diana admitted, swallowing her pride. A terrible mistake. But destroying everything I've worked for won't fix anything. Victor leaned back in his chair. The gallery is failing because your lover supplied it with questionable artwork and because you've been embezzling from its accounts. Your credit cards are maxed out because you've been living beyond your means without my income to support you. These are consequences, Diana, not punishment. What do you want? She asked desperately. To humiliate me? To watch me lose everything? What I want, Victor said quietly, is for you to experience exactly what you planned for me. To lose what you've built, to be betrayed by someone you trusted, to realize how completely you misjudged a situation. He checked his watch. Your 10 minutes are up. Diana remained seated. I'll drop the divorce proceedings. We can work through this. Victor's laugh held no humor. You still don't understand. I don't want reconciliation. I want you to face the natural consequences of your choices. As security escorted a sobbing Diana from the building, Victor turned his attention back to his computer screen, where he was reviewing updates from Max about Nolan's increasingly desperate attempts to distance himself from the questionable art transactions. That afternoon, Diana received notice that the gallery's landlord was terminating their lease due to concerns about illegal activities that might violate their contract. The building's insurance company had apparently received anonymous information about authentication issues with the gallery's inventory. Simultaneously, the bank holding the gallery's business loans initiated a review based on financial irregularities, freezing remaining operating funds. Without inventory, location, or operating capital, Diana's business effectively ceased to exist overnight. When she called Nolan, desperate for support or at least consolation, his number had been disconnected. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The art world thrives on scandal nearly as much as it does on authenticity. By the time the Montana Arts Journal published its exposé on questionable practices at Diana Sullivan's gallery, featuring interviews with former employees and clients, Diana had become a pariah in the community she had once navigated so confidently. The article stopped short of outright accusations, but raised enough questions about both Diana's business practices and Nolan's authentication methods to ensure neither would work in fine art again without significant rehabilitation. What the article didn't mention, because no one had made the connection yet, was how precisely the gallery's collapse mirrored a failed development that had nearly bankrupted Victor 15 years earlier. Back then, Victor had trusted a business partner who, like Diana, had seen him as merely a stepping stone. That partner had manipulated financial records, diverted investors, and nearly destroyed everything Victor had built. Instead of breaking him, that betrayal had taught Victor his most valuable lesson. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford in business or, as it turned out, in marriage. 2 months after the emergency hearing, Victor received an unexpected visitor at his office. Nolan Prescott, looking considerably less polished than when they'd last met, sat nervously in the reception area. You have 5 minutes, Victor told him, standing rather than inviting Nolan into his office. Use them wisely. Nolan licked his lips. I can give you Diana's journals. The real ones, not the fake abuse documentation. She recorded everything about her plan to take your money, about using me to help build a case. He lowered his voice. She even discussed finding ways to access your personal accounts before filing for divorce. Victor's expression didn't change. Why would you betray her now? The FBI is closing in on the art authentication issues, Nolan admitted. I need to make a deal. Diana was the one who knowingly sold questionable pieces. I can prove she knew the risks and proceeded anyway. So you're offering to throw Diana under the bus to save yourself? Victor observed. Just as she predicted you would. Nolan blinked in confusion. What? Diana came to see me weeks ago, Victor explained. She said you were planning to blame her for everything. It seemed she was right about one thing at least. She's lying, Nolan insisted. We were in this together, but she was the driving force. I have proof. Victor checked his watch. Your 5 minutes are up, Mr. Prescott. I suggest you take whatever proof you have for the FBI directly. I have no interest in becoming involved in your mutual betrayals. As Nolan was escorted out, Victor returned to his office and made a phone call. He took the bait, he told Max. Make sure the FBI gets an anonymous tip about those storage lockers in Prescott's name. What Victor knew, and Nolan didn't, was that Diana had indeed come to see him again, not to reconcile, but to offer up Nolan in exchange for financial clemency. Victor had declined her offer too, recognizing that the former lovers were now desperately trying to betray each other to save themselves. It was exactly the outcome Victor had anticipated when he'd first seen them kissing outside the hotel months ago. People who betrayed once would betray again when pressure was applied. His plan had simply been to ensure that pressure came from all directions simultaneously. The final divorce hearing was almost anticlimactic. With Diana's credibility destroyed and the prenuptial agreement now firmly upheld, the proceedings were brief. Diana received only what the prenup specified, a small cash settlement and her personal belongings, most of which had already been sold to cover living expenses. She sat alone on her side of the courtroom, Valerie having withdrawn as counsel weeks earlier when Diana could no longer pay her substantial fees. The confident, stylish woman who had once spat on Victor's shoes was gone, replaced by someone hollow-eyed and diminished. As the judge finalized the divorce, Diana caught Victor's eye across the courtroom, searching for some hint of the man she had married. She found nothing there but cold finality. Outside the courthouse, a reporter approached Victor. Mr. Sullivan, do you have any comment on the FBI's arrest of Nolan Prescott for art fraud and your ex-wife's possible involvement? No comment, Victor replied, walking toward his car, where Pamela waited with his schedule for the afternoon. Behind him, he heard Diana calling his name, her voice breaking. He didn't turn around. That chapter of his life was closed. Chapter 7, New Alliances. 6 months after the divorce, Victor stood on the balcony of his Tokyo hotel suite, watching the city lights flicker like stars fall into earth. Sullivan Construction had expanded internationally, with new projects breaking ground across Asia. The company's value had nearly doubled. His phone buzzed with a text from Audrey Keller, the brilliant architectural engineer he'd hired to oversee the Asian expansion. They had developed an easy professional rapport that had gradually extended into dinners that ran late into the evening, discussing not just business but art, philosophy, and their respective views on integrity. Tokyo Tower looks spectacular at night, Audrey had texted, along with a photo from her own hotel balcony 15 floors below his. Better with company, he replied, surprising himself with the invitation implicit in those words. While he waited for her response, Victor reviewed a news alert on his tablet. Nolan Prescott had been sentenced to 7 years for art fraud, with additional charges related to money laundering still pending. Diana's name appeared in the article as a former gallery owner who cooperated with investigators, though her cooperation had come too late to salvage either her reputation or her freedom. After testifying against Nolan, Diana had been charged with lesser financial crimes. She had accepted a plea deal, 3 years probation, significant fines she couldn't pay, and community service. The last Victor had heard, she was working as a clerk in a frame shop in a small Idaho town, about as far from the glamorous art world as one could get. Victor felt no satisfaction in these developments, only a cold certainty that justice had been served. He had not ruined Diana and Nolan. They had done that themselves. He had merely ensured their actions had consequences. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Audrey stood there, elegant in a simple black dress, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. I thought we might enjoy the view together, she said with a small smile. Later, as they shared wine on the balcony, Audrey asked the question most people were afraid to voice. The divorce, the gallery collapse, Prescott's arrest. Did you orchestrate all of it? Victor considered her for a long moment. I created pressure points, he finally said. What happened after that was the natural consequence of who they were. Audrey nodded, accepting this answer without judgment. My ex-husband cheated with my business partner. When I found out, I was so angry I could barely function. You seem so controlled. Anger is a luxury for people who lack patience, Victor replied. Revenge isn't about emotion. It's about strategy. Is that why you're here in Tokyo? Strategy? Victor looked out at the glittering cityscape. Partly, but also because life continues. Diana and Nolan were a chapter, not the whole story. Audrey touched his hand lightly. I like that philosophy. Too many people get stuck in their worst chapters. For the first time in over a year, Victor felt something like peace. Not happiness. He was too realistic to expect that so soon. But perhaps the potential for it somewhere in the future. Back in Montana, construction began on Victor's newest project, a modern art center built on the site of Diana's failed gallery. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew their history, though Victor described it publicly as simply addressing a community need. Local artists were thrilled by the facility's plans for affordable studio space and mentoring programs for disadvantaged youth. Precisely the kind of community engagement Diana had always dismissed as unprofitable. Among the center's first hires was Lisa Harlow, Diana's younger sister, who had been estranged from Diana for years due to what Lisa described as Diana's self-centered approach to family. Lisa had reached out to Victor after the divorce, initially to apologize for her sister's behavior, and eventually to discuss her own ideas for community arts education. Are you sure you want me involved? Lisa had asked when Victor offered her the position of education director. People will talk. People always talk, Victor had replied. What matters is what we build. The Sullivan Arts Center broke ground on a crisp autumn morning, with local officials and arts community leaders gathered for the ceremony. Victor stood slightly apart from the crowd, watching as Lisa eloquently described the center's mission to reporters. His phone buzzed with a text from Howard. Nolan Prescott requesting meeting. Claims to have important information. Advised against but thought you should know. Victor deleted the message without responding. Whatever game Prescott was playing from prison held no interest for him. That story was finished. Chapter 8. Unexpected Return. On the first anniversary of his divorce, Victor returned home from a business trip to find Pamela looking unusually concerned. Mr. Sullivan, there's someone waiting in your office. She insisted it was urgent and personal. Victor raised an eyebrow. She, Tessa Harlow, Pamela said. She says she's your former sister-in-law. Victor frowned. Diana had never mentioned another sister besides Lisa. Call security to stand by, he instructed, then headed to his office. The woman who rose from the visitor's chair was strikingly similar to Diana in coloring, but different in every other way. Where Diana had been polished and perfect, this woman had a natural, almost wild quality about her. Mr. Sullivan, she said, extending her hand. I apologize for the intrusion. I'm Tessa Harlow, Diana's half-sister. We've never met because I've been overseas for most of my adult life. Victor shook her hand, but remained standing. What can I do for you, Ms. Harlow? It's actually what I can do for you, Tessa replied, opening her bag and removing a thick manila envelope. Diana sent me these from Idaho with instructions to deliver them to you directly. Victor made no move to take the envelope. Whatever game Diana is playing now, I'm not interested. Tessa placed the envelope on his desk. I understand your reluctance. Diana and I have never been close, different mothers, different values. But she insisted these documents were important to you personally. She stepped back. My obligation ends with delivery. What you do with them is your business. After Tessa left, Victor stared at the envelope for a long moment before finally opening it. Inside were documents he immediately recognized. Ownership certificates for the 3 questionable Degas pieces from Diana's gallery. But these weren't the certificates Nolan had provided. These were authentic verification documents showing the pieces were legitimate, apparently suppressed by Nolan to artificially inflate their value through rarity. Along with the certificates was a handwritten note from Diana. Victor, these won't repair what I destroyed, but they might help you understand what really happened. Nolan convinced me the art world required strategic ambiguity to maximize profits. I was foolish and greedy enough to believe him. The paintings are real. The FBI investigation was based on falsified evidence. some of which I believe you might have provided. If you're reading this, you've won completely. I hope it brought you peace. Diana. Victor set the documents aside, unsure what to make of this development. If Diana was telling the truth, and the documentation appeared genuine, then part of Nolan's conviction had been based on incorrect evidence. Victor had assumed the art fraud allegations were legitimate, focusing his efforts only on ensuring they came to light. The thought that he might have inadvertently facilitated false charges was uncomfortable. Victor Sullivan played hardball, but he had always prided himself on operating within ethical boundaries, even when seeking justice. He called Howard. I need you to verify some documents, and I need everything we have on the Degas authentication evidence. After a thorough investigation revealed Diana was telling the truth about the artwork, Victor faced a difficult decision. Correcting the record would help Nolan Prescott, a man who had still committed other financial crimes. Remaining silent would mean being complicit in a false conviction. Victor ultimately chose integrity over vengeance. He anonymously submitted the authentic certificates to the FBI with an explanation of their provenance. He made no effort to assist Prescott beyond ensuring the truth was available to authorities. The revelation did reduce some of Nolan's charges, though his sentence was only marginally affected due to the other financial crimes he had genuinely committed. More significantly, it created a public narrative that somewhat rehabilitated Diana's professional reputation, acknowledging that she had been manipulated by Nolan regarding the authenticity issues. When the news broke, Lisa confronted Victor in his office. Did you know about this? That the art was real? No, Victor said truthfully. I assumed Prescott's entire operation was fraudulent. Lisa studied his face. And now that you know it wasn't, at least not entirely, do you regret what happened to Diana? Victor considered the question carefully. I regret that she made choices that destroyed what could have been a good life. I regret that she valued money and excitement over integrity and commitment. But I don't regret ensuring that those choices had consequences. Lisa nodded slowly. You know, growing up with Diana was difficult. She always got what she wanted, usually at someone else's expense. You're probably the first person who ever truly held her accountable. That wasn't my goal, Victor said. I simply refused to be her victim. Later that week, Victor received another envelope. This one from his investigator. Max inside was a surveillance photo of Diana in Idaho, looking thin but composed, leaving the frame shop where she worked. The accompanying note read, "Thought you should know, she's been sober 6 months. Working 2 jobs to pay restitution. Locals say she volunteers teaching art to kids on weekends." Victor placed the photo in his desk drawer without comment. Diana's redemption arc, if that's what it was, had no bearing on his life now. She had made her choices, and he had made his. Chapter 9. The Final Calculation. 2 years after the divorce, Victor stood at the podium during the grand opening of the Sullivan Arts Center, delivering brief remarks to the assembled crowd of local dignitaries and arts patrons. This center represents my belief that communities thrive when creativity has room to flourish, he concluded. Thank you to everyone who helped make this vision a reality, especially our dedicated education director, Lisa Harlow. As applause filled the modern gallery space, Victor's gaze caught on a familiar figure at the back of the crowd, Tessa Harlow, watching him with an unreadable expression. She nodded once in acknowledgement before slipping out a side door. Later, as guests mingled during the reception, Victor found himself momentarily alone in the main gallery. Audrey had flown in for the opening, but was currently engaged in conversation with the center's architect across the room. Their relationship had developed gradually into something meaningful, a partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. Quite an achievement, a voice said behind him. Victor turned to find Tessa holding 2 champagne flutes. She offered one to him, which he accepted with a nod. Diana saw the write-up in the Idaho paper, Tessa said without preamble. The Arts Center built where a gallery once stood. She called it poetic justice. How is she? Victor asked, surprising himself with the question. Surviving, Tessa replied. Sober. Working. Trying to make amends where possible. She studied him. She asked me to deliver a message, though I told her you probably wouldn't want to hear it. And yet here you are, Victor observed. Family obligation, Tessa said with a slight shrug. She wanted you to know that she understands now what she threw away, what she destroyed. Not just the marriage, but her integrity. She said to tell you that you were right about everything, especially Nolan. Victor took a sip of champagne. Is that supposed to matter to me now? I don't think so, Tessa said honestly. Diana always believed her feelings should matter more to others than they actually do. I think this message is more for her benefit than yours. Part of her making amends to herself. Victor nodded, appreciating Tessa's directness. Thank you for delivering it. Tessa finished her champagne. There's one more thing, something I wanted to ask personally. The FBI agent who investigated Nolan told Diana that the evidence against him arrived from multiple anonymous sources, perfectly organized to build a comprehensive case. He said in 20 years, he'd never seen such methodical documentation of financial crimes. Interesting, Victor said non-committally. Diana believes you orchestrated everything. Not just her downfall, but Nolan's complete destruction. She thinks you mapped out every move months in advance, like some kind of chess grandmaster. Diana always did have an active imagination, Victor remarked. Tessa laughed softly. That's what I told her. No one could be that calculating, that patient. She set down her empty glass. But watching you tonight, seeing all this. She gestured around the gallery. I'm not so sure she was wrong. Victor smiled slightly. Life rarely offers perfect justice, Ms. Harlow. Sometimes we have to design it ourselves. As Tessa left, Audrey appeared at Victor's side. Everything okay? You looked intense. Just tying up loose ends, Victor replied, taking her hand. Nothing important. That night, after the successful opening, Victor sat alone in his home office reviewing plans for his next major project, a development that would transform an abandoned industrial district into affordable housing and small business spaces. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the center. You've built something meaningful from the ashes. D. Victor deleted the message without responding. Diana Sullivan belonged to his past, and he had no interest in bridging that gap. The woman who had once been his wife had made her choices, and he had ensured those choices had permanent consequences. That chapter was closed forever. As he turned back to his work, Victor reflected on the path that had led him here. He had not sought revenge in the traditional sense, hot-blooded, emotional, destructive. Instead, he had methodically ensured that justice was served, that betrayal carried appropriate costs, and that he emerged not just intact, but stronger. In the end, Victor Sullivan had not just survived betrayal. He had alchemized it into success, turning his enemies' weapons against them with a precision they never saw coming until it was too late. The empire they had tried to steal from him had only grown more substantial, and the man they had underestimated had revealed himself to be exactly what he had always been. Someone who would never forgive a betrayal, never forget a lesson, and never leave a debt unpaid. It was not forgiveness that had freed him, but the perfect execution of justice on his own terms. And in that execution, he had found, if not happiness, then something perhaps more valuable. Peace on his own terms, with no compromises and no loose ends. Victor closed his laptop and looked out at the Montana night sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new victories. The past was settled. The future belonged entirely to him. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Man Behind the Mission. Marcus Webster wiped the rain from his jacket as he stepped into Haven House, the women's shelter he'd built from nothing over the past 8 years. The converted warehouse in South Boston hummed with life. Children's laughter from the playroom, the smell of dinner being prepared in the communal kitchen, the soft murmur of group therapy sessions in the back rooms. Mr. Webster, a young woman approached him, clutching a manila folder to her chest. Minnie Watts, one of their newest residents, had arrived 3 weeks ago with a broken arm and a restraining order that her ex-husband violated twice already. I got the job, the one at the bookstore downtown. Marcus broke into a genuine smile, the kind that reached his eyes and transformed his usually serious face. Minnie, that's incredible. When do you start? Monday. They even said they could work around my therapy schedule. Tears welled in her eyes. I never thought, after everything, I never thought I'd feel normal again. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You were always normal, Minnie. You just needed a safe place to remember that. As she walked away, beaming, Marcus felt that familiar warmth in his chest. The reason he'd abandoned a lucrative corporate law career to do this work. His phone buzzed. A text from his wife, Darlene, working late again. Don't wait up. He frowned. That was the 4th time this week. Their marriage had been showing cracks for months now. Her distance, her coldness, the way she'd stopped asking about his day. But Marcus had been too consumed with the shelter's expansion plans to address it properly. They'd been married for 6 years, and somewhere along the way, they'd become strangers sharing a mortgage. Marcus, you got a minute? Lucia Manning, his shelter director and right-hand woman for the past 5 years, poked her head into his office. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in its usual bun, but her expression was troubled. Always. What's wrong? She closed the door behind her. I got a weird call today. Some man asking specific questions about our funding, our donor list, whether we kept records of which women stayed here and when. Marcus's jaw tightened. What did you tell him? Nothing. I hung up. But Marcus, it felt wrong. Like he was fishing for information. She paused. Has Darlene been asking about the shelter lately? Darlene. He was caught off guard. She barely acknowledges what I do here. What? Lucia shifted uncomfortably. I saw her last week. Downtown, having lunch with a man. They looked intimate. And when I mentioned it to you that evening, you said she was at a conference in New York. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, but he kept his face neutral. A skill he'd learned from years of listening to traumatized women share their stories without showing pity, only strength. You're sure it was her? Positive. I almost went over to say hello, but something stopped me. The way they were sitting, the way he touched her hand. Lucia met his eyes. I'm sorry, Marcus. I should have told you sooner. After she left, Marcus sat in the darkness of his office, staring at his wedding photo on the desk. Darlene's smile looked genuine in that picture. Her hand on his chest, his arm around her waist. When had it all gone wrong? His phone buzzed again. Need to talk when you get home. Important. Marcus called an Uber. The rain had intensified, and he wasn't in the mood to drive. As he locked up Haven House, he waved to the overnight security guard, young Sellers, a former Marine who'd taken the job after his daughter had spent time at the shelter. Everything okay, boss? Young called out. You look like you've got the weight of the world on you. Marcus forced a smile. Just tired, Young. See you tomorrow. Get some rest. We got this. The black sedan pulled up, and Marcus slid in the back seat, water dripping from his coat. The driver, a man in his early 30s with a shaved head and a scar running down his left cheek, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Address confirmed. Beacon Hill, right? That's right. Marcus leaned his head back, closing his eyes. He needed to prepare himself for whatever conversation Darlene wanted to have. Part of him wondered if she was going to ask for a divorce. Part of him wondered if he'd even fight it. Chapter 2. The Revelation. The car had been moving for about 10 minutes when Marcus noticed they weren't taking the usual route. He sat up straighter, checking the GPS on his phone. They were heading toward the waterfront, away from Beacon Hill. Excuse me, Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. This isn't the right way. The driver's eyes met his in the mirror. I know. Marcus's hand moved toward the door handle, but the driver spoke quickly, urgently. Mr. Webster, I need you to listen very carefully. My name is Jesse Duncan. Your wife hired me to kill you tonight. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Marcus's entire body tensed, his mind racing through options. Jump from the moving car, try to overpower the driver, call 911. But something in Jesse's voice made him hesitate. I'm not going to hurt you, Jesse continued, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Just hear me out. Please. Pull over. Now. Marcus's voice was steel. Jesse did. parking in an empty lot near the harbor. He killed the engine and turned around, his face illuminated by the streetlights. 2 months ago, your wife contacted me through an associate. She wanted you dead. Made it look like a mugging gone wrong. She offered $50,000. Why are you telling me this? Jesse reached into the glove compartment slowly, deliberately. Marcus tensed, ready to fight, but Jesse pulled out a manila folder instead. Because I do my homework on every job. I look into who I'm being asked to kill. And when I looked into you, I found Haven House. I found a list of women you've helped over the past 8 years. He paused, his voice cracking slightly. My sister was one of them. Marcus's breath caught. Who? Rosie Duncan. She went by her married name, Rosie McCoy, when she was with you. 4 years ago, her husband nearly killed her. She was in the ICU for 2 weeks. When she got out, she had nowhere to go. You took her in. You helped her get back on her feet, helped her through therapy, helped her find a job. She talks about you like you're a saint. Marcus remembered. Rosie McCoy, broken ribs, punctured lung, cigarette burns on her arms. She'd been so fragile when she arrived, flinching at every sound. Now, if Jesse was right, she was alive and doing well enough to tell her brother about Haven House. So you're what? Having a crisis of conscience? Marcus asked, still wary. I'm a killer, Mr. Webster. I'm not a good man, but I have lines I don't cross. Jesse handed him the folder. My sister is alive because of you. She has a daughter now, my niece Emma. She's 3 years old. Rosie showed me pictures of you at Emma's baptism. You went. You celebrated with her. Marcus opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were photos, him and Darlene together, but not alone. Darlene with another man, kissing him in a parking garage. Darlene and the same man entering a hotel. Financial records showing large cash withdrawals from their joint account. Phone records with hundreds of calls to an unlisted number. Who is he? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. Martin Delaney, real estate developer. Also, your wife's lover for the past 18 months. Jesse pulled out another document. But that's not why she wants you dead. Marcus looked up sharply. Delaney is developing a luxury condo complex. The problem? It's being built on the site of a former industrial plant. The soil is contaminated, lead, arsenic, you name it. They buried the environmental reports, bribed the inspectors. People are going to live there, Mr. Webster. Children are going to play in those yards. What does this have to do with me? Haven House just purchased the lot next door for your expansion, right? You're doing your due diligence, environmental surveys, the works. When your team tests that soil, they're going to find the contamination. It'll spread to the investigation of Delaney's site. The whole project will collapse. He'll face criminal charges. And your wife, she's not just his lover. She's his business partner. She invested your money from your parents' estate that you inherited. $2 million. Marcus felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. She forged my signature, among other things. Jesse flipped to another page. She's been planning this for months. Once you're dead, she inherits everything. No investigation into the soil. Delaney's project goes forward. They both get rich. You have 60 seconds to decide, Jesse said, his voice hard. Police or me? I can make this disappear, her Delaney, all of it. Or you can go to the cops with this evidence and hope they move fast enough before Delaney realizes you know. Marcus stared at the evidence in his hands, his mind working through every angle. The police would mean investigations, lawyers, trials that could take years. Darlene and Delaney had money and connections. They could flee. They could destroy evidence. And even if they were caught, they might walk with light sentences. But there was a third option, one Jesse hadn't mentioned. I need more than 60 seconds, Marcus said quietly. And I need to know everything you know about them. Jesse studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Get in the front seat. We have a lot to discuss. Chapter 3, The Web of Deceit. They drove to a dingy motel on the outskirts of the city, one of those places that rented by the hour and didn't ask questions. Jesse had a room there, his base of operations, he called it. The walls were covered with surveillance photos, timelines, and maps. You've been watching them, Marcus said, taking in the scope of the operation. For 6 weeks. Your wife is meticulous. Oh, I give her that. But everyone makes mistakes. Jesse pointed to a photo of Darlene meeting with a heavy-set man in a suit. Recognize him? No. Edgar Gates, city councilman. He's the one who pushed through the permits for Delaney's project, despite the environmental concerns. Darlene's been paying him off $50,000 a month. Marcus sank into a chair, the full picture coming into focus. How many people are involved in this? At least 5 that I can confirm. Gates, Delaney, your wife, and 2 inspectors who signed off on fake reports, Jason Huff and Miguel Bridges. There might be more. Jesse pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. You want to know the worst part? This isn't Delaney's first time. He pulled the same scam in New Jersey 3 years ago. Kids got sick from the contaminated soil. Nothing was ever proven, but the lawsuits bankrupted the families trying to fight him. Marcus took the offered glass and downed it in one swallow. The burn in his throat was nothing compared to the rage building in his chest. Darlene hadn't just betrayed him. She'd been willing to let children get poisoned for profit. The same woman who'd once claimed to support his work at Haven House. I need to understand why you're really helping me, Marcus said. It's not just about your sister. Jesse refilled both glasses. You're right. It's about the kind of man I see in that folder. He gestured to the evidence. You dedicated your life to helping people who couldn't help themselves. My sister was suicidal when she came to you. You sat with her through panic attacks. You testified at her custody hearing. You helped her become whole again. He met Marcus's eyes. I've killed 12 people in my career, Mr. Webster. All of them were bad people, criminals, abusers, people who had it coming. I tell myself that asleep at night. But you're genuinely good. And I'm not going to be the one who takes that out of the world. So what now? Now you tell me what you want to do. Because here's the reality. If we go to the police, Darlene and Delaney have enough money to drag this out for years. They'll hire the best lawyers, discredit evidence, maybe even discredit you. And while that's happening, that condo project, it'll be finished and sold. Families will move in. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rain-soaked parking lot. His entire life had been about doing things the right way, through the system, through the law. But the system had failed so many of the women he'd helped. How many restraining orders had been violated? How many times had the police showed up too late? There's a third option, Marcus said slowly. We don't kill them, and we don't wait for the police. I'm listening. Marcus turned back to Jesse, and for the first time that night, he smiled, cold, calculating, nothing like the warm smile he'd given Minnie earlier. We destroy them. Completely. We make them face exactly what they've done. And we make sure they can never hurt anyone again. Ow! You said Delaney did this before in New Jersey. Those families, they never got justice. No. He settled out of court, paid them off for silence. Find them. Find every family, every victim. I want their stories, their evidence, everything. Marcus's mind was racing now, pieces falling into place. Darlene forged my signature on those investments. That's fraud. Gates took bribes. That's corruption. Those inspectors falsified reports, criminal negligence. We don't just go after them for trying to kill me. We go after everything. Jesse was nodding now, seeing it. We build a case so airtight they can't escape. And we make it public. All of it. The media, the FBI, everyone. They won't be able to buy their way out if the whole world is watching. Marcus pulled out his phone. But first, I need to play the part. Darlene's expecting me home. She wants to talk. Are you crazy? She hired me to kill you tonight. When you walk through that door, she's expecting you to do your job. When I walk in alive, she'll panic. And panic people make mistakes. Marcus looked at Jesse. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Jesse studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. You've got bigger balls than half the men I've worked with. All right, but I'm going to be outside that house. Anything goes wrong, I'm coming in. Fair enough. Marcus gathered the folder. One more thing. Your sister? Rosie. I want to talk to her. Why? Because if we're going to do this right, I need to know she's safe. If this goes sideways, Delaney and Darlene might come after her to get to you. We need to protect everyone we care about. Jesse's expression softened slightly. I'll set up. But Marcus? Once we start this, there's no going back. You understand that. Marcus thought of all the women at Haven House. He thought of the children who would play in poisoned yards if he didn't act. He thought of Darlene, who'd shared his bed while plotting his murder. I'm already past the point of no return, he said quietly. Let's finish this. Chapter 4. The Performance. Marcus arrived home at 11:47 p.m. The brownstone in Beacon Hill was dark except for a single light in the bedroom. His hands were steady as he unlocked the door, but his heart hammered against his ribs. Jessie was parked half a block away, watching. Darlene was sitting on the edge of their bed, still dressed in her work clothes, a designer suit that cost more than most of his shelter residents saw in a month. She looked up as he entered, and Marcus saw genuine surprise flash across her face. You're late, she said carefully. Traffic. He set down his briefcase, watching her every micro-expression. You said you wanted to talk? She stood, smoothing her skirt. I've been thinking about us, about where we're heading. And where's that? Marcus kept his voice neutral, curious. I think we need some time apart, Marcus. You're so consumed with the shelter, and I have my own career to think about. We've grown in different directions. He almost laughed. She couldn't even wait for confirmation of his death. She was already setting up the divorce narrative, probably planning to file papers and make his murder look like a tragic coincidence. I see. He moved to the closet, deliberately turning his back on her. A test. If she was planning something immediate, this was her chance. When were you thinking? Soon. Maybe next week. I've already spoken to a lawyer, just preliminary conversations. She was lying smoothly, but Marcus could hear the tension underneath. It doesn't have to be ugly. No, of course not. He pulled off his tie. Does this have anything to do with Martin Delaney? The name landed like a grenade. Darlene's face went white. What? Who told you? I saw the pictures, Darlene. You and him. I've known for weeks. Another lie, but a useful one. Is that why you want the divorce? You're leaving me for him. She recovered quickly. He had to give her that. I didn't want you to find out like this. Yes, Martin and I have been seeing each other. I'm sorry, Marcus. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. He turned to face her fully, and he let all his rage, all his pain, show on his face. Let her think she'd wounded him. Let her think he was the victim. How long? Does it matter? It matters to me. She sighed, playing the part of the regretful adulteress. 1.5 years. I met him at a fundraiser. You were working late, as always. He made me feel seen, Marcus, like I mattered. And the $2 million for my inheritance? Does he make you feel seen when you're investing my money in his projects? Her eyes went wide. She hadn't expected that. Marcus, I can explain. Can you explain hiring someone to kill me? Dead silence. The color drained from her face completely. You're being paranoid. Jesse Duncan sends his regards. Marcus pulled out his phone and played a recording. Jesse's voice, clear as day. Your wife hired me to kill you tonight. Darlene stumbled backward, hitting the dresser. You don't understand. It's not what you think. Marcus, please. Tell me the truth. All of it. Right now. He stepped toward her, and she flinched. Good. And maybe I don't go to the police tonight. She was breathing hard, trapped, calculating her options. Finally, she spoke. It was Martin's idea. The contamination, you were going to discover it with your soil tests. Everything would have fallen apart. He said this was the only way. The only way to what? Get rich from poisoning children. We didn't know about the contamination at first. Her voice rose, defensive. Not until the permits were already approved. By then, we'd invested everything. If we backed out, we'd lose millions. Martin said we could mitigate it, make it safe enough. Safe enough. Marcus felt his control slipping. There's no safe level of lead contamination for children, Darlene. You know that. I know you know that because we had dinner with a pediatrician last year who spent an hour talking about it. She wrapped her arms around herself. What do you want, Marcus? Money? I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't go to the police. Please. This was the moment. Marcus could see it in her eyes. She'd throw Delaney under the bus to save herself. She'd cooperate, give evidence, turn on everyone. But that wasn't enough. He needed to know everything. I want names. Everyone involved. Everyone who knew about the contamination, everyone who took bribes, everyone who helped you plan this. He pulled out his phone again. And I want it recorded. Right now. If I do this, you'll let me go? If you do this, I won't call the police tonight. That's all I'm promising. It was enough. Darlene started talking, and Marcus recorded every word. Chapter 5, Gathering Allies. By 3 a.m., Marcus had a full confession. Darlene had named Edgar Gates, the city councilman, Jason Huff and Miguel Bridges, the inspectors. She'd detailed the payments, the timeline, the whole conspiracy. But she'd also revealed something crucial. There was a sixth person involved. Who? Marcus demanded. Randolph Carpenter. He's a lawyer. He helped set up the shell companies to hide the money trail. He's also the one who recommended Jesse Duncan to Martin. Marcus's blood ran cold. A lawyer recommended an assassin? Carpenter's not just a lawyer. He's connected to organized crime. Martin used him for all his shady deals. Darlene was crying now, mascara running down her face. Please, Marcus. I've told you everything. Just let me go. You're not going anywhere. He called Jesse. Get in here. Bring zip ties. Jesse was through the door in 2 minutes, and together they secured Darlene to a chair in the study. She screamed threats, promises, apologies. Marcus ignored all of it. We need to move fast, Jesse said once they were alone in the kitchen. Once Delaney realizes you're alive and Darlene's missing, he'll go to ground. Not if he thinks everything's still going according to plan. Marcus was thinking 3 moves ahead now. Darlene was supposed to call him after I was dead, right? According to the messages I intercepted, yes. Then that's what she's going to do. Marcus pulled out Darlene's phone. He'd taken it while securing her. You're good with voices? Jesse smiled grimly. I've done some impersonations in my time. What do you need? Call Delaney. Tell him it's done. Tell him I'm dead. Buy us time. While Jesse worked on perfecting Darlene's speech patterns, Marcus made another call to Lucia Manning. Marcus? It's 3 in the morning. Lucia, I need you to trust me. Something's happened, and I need you to get all the women and children out of Haven House for the next 48 hours. Can you do that? Her voice sharpened immediately. Are they in danger? Not if we move fast, but I need everyone somewhere safe. No questions asked, no trail. Can you make that happen? We have protocols for this. Give me 4 hours. You've got 3. Next, Marcus called his lawyer, not Randolph Carpenter, but his personal attorney, a woman named Leanne Dunham, who'd helped him set up Haven House's nonprofit status. She answered on the 4th ring, groggy. Marcus, Leanne, I need you to draft an emergency restraining order and file it first thing this morning. My wife attempted to have me killed last night. I have evidence. I also need you to freeze all our joint accounts and secure my personal assets. Silence. Then, I'll be at your house in 30 minutes. While he waited, Marcus reviewed the evidence Jesse had compiled. Financial records, photographs, phone logs, Darlene's confession. It was damning, but it wasn't complete. They needed more to bring down the entire network. Jesse ended the call with Delaney. He bought it. Expects to meet Darlene tomorrow at noon to celebrate. Perfect. That's our window. Marcus spread out a map of the city. Here's what we're going to do. The plan was audacious, probably illegal in a dozen ways, but it would work. Marcus outlined each step while Jesse listened, occasionally nodding or suggesting refinements. By the time Leanne Dunham arrived, they had a roadmap to destruction. Leanne took one look at Darlene tied up in the study and turned to Marcus. I'm going to pretend I didn't see that. Tell me everything, and make it fast. Marcus did. When he finished, Leanne was pale but determined. This is beyond anything I've handled before. We need federal investigators. Marcus. FBI, EPA, probably the DA's office. I know, but if we go to them now, Delaney and Carpenter will lawyer up and the whole thing will get buried in bureaucracy. We need to create a situation where they can't hide. He handed her a USB drive. This is everything, all the evidence, all the recordings. I need you to hold on to it. If anything happens to me, it goes to the media and the FBI simultaneously. What are you planning? I'm planning to make them confess in front of witnesses. Lots of witnesses. Leanne studied him for a long moment. The Marcus Webster I knew 8 years ago wouldn't have done something like this. The Marcus Webster you knew 8 years ago hadn't been marked for death by his own wife. He met her eyes. They were going to poison children, Leanne. For profit. I can't let that happen. She nodded slowly. All right. I'm in. But we do this smart. No vigilante justice. We get them on record, we get them caught, and we let the system handle it. Agreed. Marcus shook her hand. Now get out of here before you're implicated any further. After she left, Marcus returned to the study where Darlene sat, exhausted and defeated. I'm going to ask you some questions about Carpenter, and you're going to answer every single one. She looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. You've changed, Marcus. You used to be so idealistic. What happened to the man who believed in redemption? He learned that some people don't want redemption, Marcus said coldly. They just want to win. Now start talking. Chapter 6, The Trap. The next morning, Marcus walked into Haven House looking like he hadn't slept, which was true. Lucia met him at the door, her face creased with worry. Everyone's out. I sent them to our sister shelter in Providence. But Marcus, people are asking questions. Tell them it's a precaution related to a domestic situation. They'll understand. He squeezed her shoulder. You did good, Lucia. Now I need one more favor. Name it. I need you to call a press conference for tomorrow afternoon. Tell them Haven House has a major announcement about the shelter expansion and community development. Her eyes widened. You're going public with this? I'm going to make sure there are so many eyes on this situation that no one can make it disappear. He pulled out his phone and showed her the plan. Can you get media there? Marcus, this is insane. Probably. Will you help me anyway? She smiled grimly. Those women you helped? You gave them their lives back. Including me. I was resident number 3, remember? Before I became your director. Whatever you need, I'm in. He'd forgotten that Lucia herself had once been a resident. She'd come to Haven House 7 years ago after her husband put her in the hospital for the last time. She'd rebuilt herself, gone back to school for social work, and become indispensable to the shelter's operations. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. While Lucia worked on press arrangements, Marcus met Jesse at a warehouse in Southie. Jesse had been busy too. He tracked down Randolph Carpenter's office, his home, his routine. More importantly, he found something interesting. Carpenter's got a problem, Jesse said, pulling up surveillance footage on his laptop. He likes to gamble, and he's bad at it. Owes money to some very dangerous people. How much? 300 grand to a loan shark connected to the Russo family. Marcus's mind word. That's leverage. If we can offer him a way out. You want to flip him against Delaney? Lawyers keep records. Carpenter probably has documentation of everything. All the shell companies, all the payments, everything Delaney doesn't want found. If we can convince him to cooperate. Jesse shook his head admiringly. You're not just out for revenge. You're out for total annihilation. They tried to kill me to cover up poisoning children. They don't deserve half measures. Marcus pulled out his phone. Set up a meeting with Carpenter. Tell him you're a business associate of Delaney's and you have a proposition. While Jesse arranged that, Marcus drove to meet with someone else. Rosie Duncan, Jesse's sister. She'd agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in Cambridge, away from her usual haunts. Rosie was in her early 30s, with kind eyes and her brother's same sharp features. When she saw Marcus, she stood and hugged him immediately. Mr. Webster, Jesse told me what's happening. I can't believe, she pulled back, tears in her eyes. You saved my life. And now someone tried to take yours. Rosie, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you willing to testify about your time at Haven House? About what we do there, why it matters? Of course. But why? Marcus explained the plan, the press conference, the public exposure, the need to show the community what was at stake. If Delaney's project goes forward, other women like you won't have safe places to go. The contamination will spread. More children will get sick. I need people to understand what we're fighting for. She didn't hesitate. I'll do it. I'll tell them everything. There might be blowback, media attention. Are you prepared for that? Rosie straightened her shoulders. 4 years ago, I was so broken I wanted to die. You taught me to be strong again. Let me use that strength for something that matters. That afternoon, Marcus met with Randolph Carpenter in a parking garage, neutral ground that Jesse had swept for surveillance. Carpenter was a thin man in his 50s, impeccably dressed, but with the haggard look of someone carrying too many secrets. I don't know you, Carpenter said immediately, and I don't meet with strangers. You know my wife, Darlene Webster. You helped her set up shell companies to hide money from the condo project with Martin Delaney. Marcus didn't waste time with pleasantries. You also recommended Jesse Duncan to kill me. Carpenter went rigid. I don't know what you're talking about. Save it. I have recordings. I have evidence. And in about 36 hours, I'm going to hand all of it to the FBI and the media simultaneously. Marcus stepped closer. Unless you cooperate. You're bluffing. Am I? Because here's what's going to happen if I go public with what I have. Delaney goes down for fraud, environmental crimes, and attempted murder. Your law license gets revoked. You go to prison. And that $300,000 you owe to Russo's people, you'll never be able to pay it. They don't take IOUs from inmates. Carpenter's face went white. How do you? I make it my business to know everything about the people trying to destroy me. Marcus pulled out an envelope. Here's my offer. You testify against Delaney. You provide all the documentation of his crimes. You cooperate fully with investigators. In exchange, I arrange for your gambling debt to be paid off, and I work with the DA to get you immunity from prosecution. That's impossible. I don't have that kind of money. I do. My parents' estate. The $2 million Darlene stole from me? I'm getting it back. And I'm willing to use part of it to pay your debt if it means bringing down everyone involved in this conspiracy. Carpenter was sweating now. Why would you do that? Because I want Delaney to pay for everything he's done. And I want to make sure he can't hurt anyone else. You're a worm, Carpenter, but you're not the head of the snake. Help me cut it off. For a long moment, Carpenter said nothing. Then, what exactly do you need? Marcus smiled. Everything. Every document. Every email. Every shady deal Delaney's ever done. And I need you to be ready to testify tomorrow at a press conference. Tomorrow? That's insane. Tomorrow, where the deal's off and I go to the FBI tonight. Marcus's voice was iron. Your choice. Carpenter closed his eyes, defeated. Fine. I'll do it. Chapter 7. Checkmate. The press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Haven House. By noon, the shelter's main room was packed with media. Local news crews, investigative reporters, even a producer from a national network that had been covering contamination scandals nationwide. Marcus stood backstage with Lucia, Jesse, who'd cleaned up surprisingly well in a suit, Rosie, and Carpenter. Leon Dunham was there too, ready to handle legal questions. Last chance to back out, Jesse murmured. Not a chance. Marcus checked his watch. Is everything in place? FBI is standing by. They've reviewed the evidence you sent anonymously this morning. They're ready to move as soon as you give a signal. Jesse handed him a small device, a panic button that would alert federal agents waiting outside. Edgar Gates is in custody. They grabbed him an hour ago based on the recordings. He's already cooperating. And Delaney? He thinks he's meeting Darlene at his office right now. Instead, he's going to be met by agents with arrest warrants. Marcus nodded. Everything was converging. Then let's do this. He walked out to the podium, and the room fell silent. Cameras flashed. Microphones clustered around him like hungry mouths. Thank you all for coming, Marcus began. My name is Marcus Webster, and 8 years ago, I founded Haven House to provide shelter and support for women escaping domestic violence. In that time, we've helped over 300 women and their children rebuild their lives. He paused, letting that number sink in. Yesterday, I learned that my wife hired an assassin to kill me. The room erupted in shouting questions. Marcus held up a hand. I learned this because the assassin in question, a man named Jesse Duncan, chose not to go through with it. Why? Because his sister was one the women Haven House helped save. She was number 47. Jesse stepped forward, and cameras swiveled to capture him. My name is Jesse Duncan. I'm a contract killer. Marcus Webster's wife, Darlene Webster, hired me through an intermediary to murder her husband and make it look like a mugging. She offered me $50,000. The room went ballistic. Marcus continued, his voice cutting through the chaos. My wife wanted me dead because Haven House's expansion was going to expose environmental contamination at a nearby condo development. That development is being built by Martin Delaney, who is also my wife's lover and business partner. The contamination includes lead and arsenic at levels that pose severe health risks, especially to children. He nodded to Lucia, who brought out poster boards covered in soil test results, medical studies, and photographs of the site. Delaney and my wife, along with City Councilman Edgar Gates and Inspectors Jason Huff and Miguel Bridges, conspired to hide this contamination so the project could move forward. They bribed officials, falsified reports, and when they realized I might discover the truth, they decided to kill me. Randolph Carpenter stepped forward now, visibly shaking. My name is Randolph Carpenter. I'm an attorney. I helped Martin Delaney set up shell companies to hide the money trail and avoid accountability. I also connected him with Jesse Duncan. Everything Marcus Webster is saying is true. I have documents proving all of it. Marcus pulled out a USB drive and held it up. This contains financial records, phone recordings, surveillance footage, and a full confession from my wife detailing the entire conspiracy. I'm providing copies to the FBI, the EPA, the state DA's office, and all of you. Leanne Dunham stepped forward with boxes of evidence packets for the media. But this isn't just about me, Marcus continued, his voice rising with passion. This is about what happens when greed and corruption are allowed to flourish. Martin Delaney did this same thing in New Jersey 3 years ago. Children got sick. Families were devastated. And he got away with it because he had money and connections. He gestured to Rosie, who stepped to the microphone. My name is Rosie Duncan. 4 years ago, my husband beat me nearly to death. I had nowhere to go, no hope, no future. Marcus Webster gave me all three. Haven House saved my life. Her voice cracked with emotion. Places like this matter. The work Marcus does matters. And people like Martin Delaney and Darlene Webster try to destroy it all just to make money. The emotional impact was visible. Reporters were wiping their eyes. Cameras captured every moment. Marcus delivered the final blow. I'm calling on the FBI to immediately investigate Martin Delaney, my wife Darlene Webster, Edgar Gates, Jason Huff, Miguel Bridges, and Randolph Carpenter for fraud, corruption, environmental crimes, and conspiracy to commit murder. I'm also calling on the city to halt the condo project immediately and conduct a full environmental assessment. On cue, his phone buzzed. He checked it and looked up with satisfaction. I've just been informed that the FBI has taken Martin Delaney into custody. Edgar Gates was arrested earlier today. Warrants are being served for Huff and Bridges as we speak. The room exploded with questions, but Marcus was done. He stepped back from the podium and let Leanne field the legal questions while he, Jesse, and Rosie slipped out the back. Chapter 8. Reckoning. The fallout was immediate and devastating. By evening, every major news outlet in the country was running the story. Shelter founder nearly murdered in contamination cover-up screamed the headlines. Darlene's confession, played on national television, became the most-watched clip of the week. Martin Delaney's mugshot went viral. Marcus watched from his lawyer's office as the dominoes fell. Edgar Gates, desperate to save himself, testified about every bribe he'd ever taken. Jason Huff and Miguel Bridges were fired and arrested within hours. The condo project was shut down, the site cordoned off for environmental remediation. But the real victory came 3 days later. The FBI's investigation, fueled by Carpenter's documentation and Darlene's confession, uncovered not just the Boston project, but 3 other similar schemes Delaney had run in different cities. Environmental regulators descended on all the sites. Families who'd been sickened in New Jersey came forward with renewed lawsuits, armed with the proof they'd never had before. Delaney's entire empire collapsed within a week. Marcus received a call from the lead FBI investigator, a woman named Jody Tate. Mr. Webster, I wanted to update you personally. We've charged Delaney with 17 counts including fraud, environmental crimes, bribery, and conspiracy to commit murder. Your wife faces similar charges. Carpenter's cooperation earned him a reduced sentence, 5 years with possibility of parole. Gates is looking at 10 to 15. Huff and Bridges will likely get 3 to 5 each. And Delaney? He's going away for the rest of his life. The prosecutor's pushing for 40 years minimum. She paused. You should know, we've also identified 63 families across 4 states who were affected by his contaminated developments. They're filing a class action suit. Between criminal restitution and civil damages, Delaney's going to be bankrupted. Marcus felt a grim satisfaction. What about my wife? The DA's offering her a deal, 25 years in exchange for full testimony against Delaney. Her lawyers advising her to take it. 25 years. Darlene would be in her 60s when she got out. If she got out, there's one more thing, Agent Tate said. Jesse Duncan. Technically, he confessed to being a contract killer. We should prosecute. Marcus's jaw tightened. He saved my life. He stopped a murder and helped expose a massive conspiracy. I know, and between you and me, I don't want to prosecute him either. But he admitted to 12 murders on national television. Self-defense and defense of others, Marcus said quickly. He was protecting me from imminent harm. His confession was made under duress, and he's cooperating fully with authorities. Agent Tate was quiet for a moment. Your lawyer already called me with that exact argument. It's thin, Mr. Webster. Then make it work. Please. He could have killed me and collected his money. Instead, he did the right thing. Doesn't that count for something? I'll talk to the DA. No promises. After she hung up, Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhausted. Leanne Dunham walked in with coffee. You look like hell, she said. I feel like hell. He took the coffee gratefully. Is it over? The legal part? Far from it. This is going to be in court for years. But the immediate danger? Yes, it's over. Delaney and Darlene can't hurt you or anyone else anymore. Marcus thought of all the families in New Jersey, all the children who'd gotten sick, all the women at Haven House who needed a safe place. It's not enough. They should pay more. They will. Trust me, prison is going to be especially hard on people like them. Leanne sat across from him. But you need to think about yourself now. About healing. About moving forward. How am I supposed to move forward? My wife tried to kill me. I've been living a lie for years. You focus on what's real. Haven House is real. The women you've helped are real. The good you've done is real. She leaned forward. Marcus, you're a hero. Do you understand that? You exposed a massive conspiracy, saved countless lives, and brought down some truly evil people. That's real. He wanted to believe her, but all he felt was tired. Chapter 9, New Foundations. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the finished expansion of Haven House. The lot next door had been properly tested, cleaned, and built into a new wing with 20 additional beds, a medical clinic, a daycare center, and offices for therapists and social workers. The opening ceremony was packed. Rosie was there with her daughter Emma, who ran giggling through the new playroom. Lucia stood beside him, beaming with pride. Young Sellers, the security guard, had been promoted to head of security for both buildings. And Jesse Duncan was there, dressed in a suit, looking uncomfortable but present. The DA had cut him a deal after all. 10 years probation, mandatory therapy, and 500 hours of community service. He'd chosen to do that service at Haven House, teaching women's self-defense classes. It turned out that a reformed hitman was excellent at helping women feel safe and powerful. Speech time, Lucia whispered. Marcus stepped to the microphone, looking out at the crowd, reporters, donors, residents, community members, even some of the FBI agents who'd worked the case. 4 months ago, I learned that the person I trusted most wanted me dead, he began. I learned that people I'd never met were willing to poison children for profit. I learned that the system I believed in could be corrupted and broken. He paused, finding Rosie's eyes in the crowd, then Jesse's. But I also learned that there are people who will do the right thing even when it costs them everything. I learned that one person's courage can inspire dozens more. I learned that when you bring truth into the light, darkness has nowhere to hide. He gestured to the building around him. This expansion represents more than just beds and services. It represents every woman who refused to give up, every person who chose justice over convenience, every voice that said no more. His voice grew stronger. Martin Delaney is in prison. Darlene Webster is in prison. Edgar Gates, Jason Huff, Miguel Bridges, all of them are facing the consequences of their actions. But more importantly, 63 families who were hurt by Delaney's greed are getting compensation and justice. For contaminated sites are being cleaned up, and new laws are being passed to prevent this from ever happening again. The crowd erupted in applause. None of that would have happened if one person, Jesse Duncan, hadn't chosen to be brave. If Rosie Duncan hadn't shared her story. If Lucia Manning hadn't helped protect our residents. If Randolph Carpenter hadn't chosen to do the right thing in the end. Marcus looked directly at Jesse. We all have the capacity for both good and evil. What matters is which one we choose to act on. After the ceremony, Marcus found Jesse standing alone in the new courtyard, looking up at the building. "You okay?" Marcus asked. Jesse shrugged. "Never thought I'd be teaching women how to fight back against men like I used to be." "You're not that person anymore, aren't I? I've killed 12 people, Marcus. Doing community service doesn't erase that." "No, it doesn't. But it's a start." Marcus put a hand on Jesse's shoulder. "My sister, Rosie, she told me you visit Emma every week. You read to her, play with her, make her laugh. She's my niece. She's also proof that you're capable of love, of being gentle, of choosing life instead of death." Marcus met his eyes. "You saved me, Jesse. Not just my physical life, but you reminded me that even in the darkest situations, people can surprise you." Jesse's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Your wife really did a number on you." "Yes, she did. But you know what? I survived, and I'm stronger for it." Marcus looked at the building full of women who'd survived their own hells. "We all are." Later that evening, Marcus sat alone in his new apartment. He'd sold the brownstone, unable to live in a place with so many painful memories. He poured himself a drink and pulled out his phone. There was a message from Agent Tate. "Delaney's sentenced today. 45 years, no parole. Thought you'd want to know." Marcus smiled. "Justice." Another message from Lucia. 6 new women arrived today. They're scared but hopeful. "Thank you for making this possible." Purpose. And finally, a message from Jesse. "Emma wants you to come to her 4th birthday party next month. Fair warning. There'll be a bounce house, and I'm required to participate. Family. Not by blood, but by choice." Marcus set down his phone and looked at the framed photo on his desk. The entire Haven House staff and residents, taken at the expansion opening. Dozens of faces, dozens of stories of survival and strength. He'd been betrayed by the person who was supposed to love him most. He'd nearly been murdered. He'd had to make impossible choices and walk